And so, everything is part of the wholeness. Absolutely everything. But we have to know the divine nature, the true nature, the naturalness, the simplicity of who we are, in order to see clearly from the true perspective. And from this true perspective, we can then receive life in a very, very different way. Because then life is not happening to us. Life is just a flow. And then we are not reactive to life, right? We can just receive it. We can receive it as a flow of grace. So this moment here now is always inviting us to know the naturalness, the presence that is underlying everything that is moving and changing, is inviting us to know the naturalness, to know the wholeness and the simplicity, the stillness. It is just a habit to move the attention towards the moving, changing, towards the coming and going, the activity of things, the experience. We have learned to be the character in the experience. But the presence of this moment is that missing piece that we tend to look for in life, in things, in the external. We're looking to find that true fulfillment, but true fulfillment is the fullness of knowing the true nature. And that fullness can only be discovered in the emptiness that is the silent, spacious, vast, boundless being that is the true nature. It is the recognition that you are not a thing. You are not someone in the way that the mind believes, not someone that is separate and individual from the whole. It is the dissolving of the someoneness that is holding a quality of a me and mine that creates division and separation out of a need to protect, and out of a need to be right, out of a need to defend. And all of that is completely innocent because it's been learned. But to travel on the surface of life, looking for fulfillment and looking for the profundity of true nature, it cannot be found on the surface of life. So that is a journey which can never be fulfilled. It's a quest that can only constantly lead to disappointment, because true nature can only be found in the now, in the being, through being yourself, recognizing the absolute truth of who you are. Being the being. When you are resting here now, feeling your simple existence, just being here. The self of all is here. The self of all is who you are. You are the simple truth that has been sought for in the world of things. You are the freedom. You are the love, the peace, the beauty. You are everything that can be sought for in the world. But to know this absolutely, to know this actually as your true nature, is where the seeking ends and fulfillment is realized. It doesn't mean that the work of receiving the grace of the world doesn't go on, because the way that consciousness works is that it continues to unravel itself, it continues to unwind itself, and it is incredibly thorough, right? It's so thorough. It will dig up absolutely everything that has been pushed down and suppressed, and it will uncover every single stone. Even if the surface looks very sweet and beautiful, life will find ways to uncover everything that is acting as some kind of veiling to the deepest truth of who you are. Now, this work is not easy. This work is challenging, and yet does not have to be suffering if we are not playing the character with a quality of being identified. If we feel to be separate, then we feel to be a victim to life, to the world. And we fall into qualities of pain on the surface where we can feel the misery of why is this happening to me again, right? Because life is repeating. The way that karma plays is that it repeats and repeats and repeats until we see the rhythm of this. The rhythm of this is the energetic signature. And the way that we untangle the energetic signature and complete these karmic pieces is by meeting the rawness of the alive sensation in the nervous system and dropping deeper into the feeling, the heart, instead of trying to navigate it through the mind's maze, which is well-intentioned and wanting to find resolve. But this is not about resolving in order to find a transitory, temporary peace. It's not about finding a quality of relaxed ego. It's about that which is the ego, the tangle of consciousness that creates ego, dissolving and untangling all the way to know its true nature, merging, dissolving back into the infinite forever that it came from. And this is where true freedom is, right? So everything that is happening on the surface of life is conspiring to bring us to this true knowledge. It's not a knowledge for the mind. It's not an understanding. It's pure, true knowledge. And true knowledge is self-knowledge. Knowledge of the self is the knowledge of the self of all, the one being, the self that is true. And this carries itself in consciousness all the way to the deepest depths of divine knowing, to the light, to the clarity. It carries itself where words don't matter. So in the play of the world, the word self gets used for different layers of this unfolding, different qualities and values of maturity and readiness. But we don't really want to worry about the words and trying to qualify and classify and make sense with the mind. Essentially, we come to a place where words just fall away because the fulfillment and the fullness of knowing yourself, knowing your true nature, knowing the being that you are, is so rich and true that a need to understand it and measure it just falls away because you recognize that as the infinite being, you are immeasurable. You are beyond measure, beyond quantifying, beyond analysis. And the naturalness of the unfolding in consciousness brings about a way of seeing how absolutely everything is included. Everything is included. There's nothing outside of wholeness. There's nothing that doesn't belong. But the process of unfolding into your true nature allows a quality of freedom, of being the truth of who you are, recognizing in the presence of now that you are the vast open space of being, the infinite field that is always untouched by anything that is happening. When this really lands, it is your sanctuary, it is the refuge, it is the silent, still, simple beingness that is always true. And there is a phase where it seems like going backwards and forwards between the person and feeling identified and the being. But this is just the natural refining process, coming to know your oneness, coming to know yourself as the field, and then coming into knowing the unified nature of the field is what brings every single thing into divine remembering. It is like weaving all the disparate threads back into the remembering. Everything already belongs. Everything already is in perfect place. But it is our perspective of seeing that allows opinion and judgment and conditioning to cloud the view and to bring a quality of filters into place so that we're seeing through the filters of conditioning. So, this moment here now, the felt sense of being yourself, the felt sense of being here, the felt sense of your existence, it opens to the openness. It opens to being the being. And so as these words come, it's not about understanding. It is to feel the resonance of where you recognize this truth, because you already are this truth. And these words are your heart speaking to you the truth of who you are. These words are not separate from your own being. These words are rising up from your being, the one being, to gather the pieces through the resonant transmission and carry the attention to the open field that is truth, where the recognition can land. When recognition lands, you never unrecognize. As it lands, you open to a quality of yourself that you never ever forget again, right? It can seem like you've forgotten, but you never forget. As you forge a path, the light starts to shine and the remembering comes in. And that never ever regresses. You're always on a trajectory that is guiding you to the finer and finer, clearer and clearer values of true nature. Where it feels like forgetting happens, it's just that the attention has wandered, right? So just as these words come, recognize what is being spoken. Recognize the resonance that lands as a yes, as an aha, as a truth. You recognize it because it is already your direct experience. And these words are just pointing so that the fog, the mist clears through the warmth of your own heart speaking these words. And you recognize, yes, 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 yes. But there's not someone that knows it. So be aware of this too, that it's not someone that says, yes, I know this, I know this. You're not collecting it for the me. You're opening and opening and opening to the boundless knowledge, the true wisdom, which is the one self-knowledge. It's the one field of intelligence. So this that's coming forward, these words are your words. They're your knowing, and they're coming forward. Your heart speaking the truth that you long to hear, that you want to hear, that you're ready to hear, that your mind might not want to hear, but your true heart is longing to drink the nectar of true nature. Your heart is longing to feel the clarity and lightness of being yourself. So as these words come and you feel the resonance of truth, it's to recognize, where are you feeling it? Where is the noticing? This is really important because it stops the the me being able to gather and separate, right? So when you feel where you are recognizing this, you are recognizing it in the awareness, in the aware being. And the aware being is everywhere. The aware being is openness. The aware being is resonating with the aliveness of its own knowing. And these words are just attuning, enlivening the resonance of your own knowing so that you recognize more deeply. All of life is conspiring to bring a deepening. It is easier to receive the offerings that come on the surface of life as challenge when the true nature is recognized. Because when you recognize this vast space of the being, you are the being that is receiving everything. And you recognize that as the being, you're not touched. So this is why we reference this very often, that when the nervous system is triggered or charged, when the nervous system has got an alert to protect, to defend coming forward, it is to feel the feelings. It's never to get away or bypass away from the feelings. It's to feel the feelings. But once you have received the information of the trigger, then it is to come to the being and recognize, is the being here? Is the being that I am here, the vast open field? Yes. Is the being touched or disturbed? No. Right? You're the spaciousness in which the discordant pattern of consciousness is unraveling, that brings the feeling of being triggered, a charge. It brings the feeling of the alert to the need to protect. Right? So as these words come, we're just describing the mechanism of consciousness. And you can start to recognize, yes, you start to recognize it as, we could say, behavior. But what we call behavior is the patterning of consciousness flowing in certain habitual ways. And as we bring awareness to these patterns, awareness is like a light, a warm, soft, welcoming, open, embracing light of presence that shines upon the patterns that need to defend and protect. And as awareness, the light and the softness, the kindness, the openness touches these patterns, there's nothing that needs to happen, but the patterns of consciousness that are like knots and tangles, they naturally soften, they surrender, they melt, because all that those patterns are longing for, all of those places in you are longing for, is to stop protecting, stop defending, to let go. All that is longed for is love that is true, is presence that is unwavering. It's connection to source, to mother, to God, to the divine. Whatever word we want to call that, it's all the same. But the true longing of the heart is to know its true nature, is to surrender its personal quality of protection to the infinite and to live unedited, unfiltered, free as love that loves and flows as love, that knows itself as the love that is longed for. This is the freedom that is longed for. Right? So we recognize this in really simple terms. We can recognize it on the surface of life in simplicity, but it's to bring attention to how we recognize it as a deep, we recognize it as a deep exhale, a deep answer to the truest prayer, the truest longing of the heart for love, for presence, for connection. And we recognize that every move through the character on the surface of life that's playing through conditioning is looking for this fulfillment in things, in people, in roles, in jobs, in possessions, in positions, right? It's the habit that we've learned. Look for it out there. Find ways of validating and feeling that you're right, of affirming yourself. But all of this is just tangling the tangle more. It's making knotty dreadlocks out of an already big enough tangle, right? So you get to the point where you just cannot untangle them and you've just got to chop them off, right? So nothing wrong with dreadlocks. You could live with them forever. Great glory to the dreadlocks. But you get the sense of what we're referencing, right? At some point, the knots get so tangled that you have to just drop into the now and see that your work on this earth plane, this human embodiment, is not the work to be the one that is feeling like they have the world on their shoulders and that their quest is to untangle those matted knots in order to be a successful one that has conquered life, that has won the game of life. The invitation of every moment is just to drop through the cracks and be the light of the world, be the light that is shining upon all of the defense mechanisms of your person. Recognize that you are not limited to being the person, that you are the vast presence in which person is happening, we could say, right? So we can say you are not the person, that there is no person that is personal and separate. You are the impersonal self, but the impersonal self plays on the surface of what we can call person. So we're not here to get tangled up in words, right? We can find sense in all of it. The words don't really matter. But the truth is that where personhood is protection, is conditioning, and is defense, and is feeling separate and differentiated from the whole, then this is what we are pointing to. We are pointing to the dissolving of the edges, of the boundaries, to recognize that true nature is the vast open spaciousness, and to come to the now, to feel your own existence here now. You can come to this, you can come to freedom right now. It's not about the mind saying, yeah, but how do I live this? How do I work it out? All of this just comes. That is just another strategy to defend in this moment, where the invitation is saying, let go completely right now. Feel the presence of your own being. Feel the freedom here now. The deeper that you recognize it here now, the more you are forging this open pathway through the jungle and seeing the light. Every glimpse of the light is valuable and valid. Every glimpse of the light is profundity, it's wholeness, and it's natural. It's the naturalness of true nature. So every glimpse of the light is to feel the freedom of just being here. Feel the awareness. The aware being is aware of all that is moving and changing. And yet the aware being itself is not moving at all. The stillness that is ever still, the unboundedness, and the felt sense of this still part of yourself is the missing piece that has been searched for. It's the missing piece that the seeker has been seeking for. But what is required is for the seeker to surrender itself into the now in order to be the living answer, be the living finding. The living finding is to find yourself here now so fully that there's nothing else here but the presence that you are. We could say that personhood, persondom, the kingdom of the person, surrenders naturally into the discovery of the being. And it's this simple. What is not simple is that the habit of attention to go towards the moving, changing is deeply, deeply ingrained. This is the part that feels hard. To recognize your true nature is incredibly simple. To abide in it, to live it, is the quest, we could say. But every taste of yourself, every glimpse of the light of your true nature, every felt sense of falling deeper into the infinite heart, it lands you and brings a steadier and steadier footing in the ground. You feel the connection to source, connection to love, connection to the peace that is never disturbed. You feel the connection that is alive as a knowing. This is who you are. This is your true nature. This is the self, just being itself. And the deeper that you come to recognize the stillness, the silence, the being, there's a greater and greater settling of your nervous system. The nervous system is so conditioned to be on alert, to protect, that it takes a while for the nervous system to unwind and settle into the stillness of feeling that there is no need to protect. And this is where reaction starts to fall away. Because even when something moves into the field, that brings an alertness to the nervous system, the recognition that there's nothing to react to. It's just to feel and be, receive, and allow the aliveness of the nervous system, the feelings, sensations of the nervous system that are discordant to release their charge. Is to let the bomb diffuse in the vast open field rather than letting the bomb go off, right? You just let it diffuse. You let the bomb of reaction to protect just dead gently diffuse. And every time a pattern diffuses, untangles, unravels, whatever word we want to use for that, when it really, really is seen all the way through, you refine it back to the being. How it goes all the way back to the being is by recognizing a being that is not touched, being the space that it's unraveling into. And then relationship, we could say, of being the being that's aware of the discordant pattern. As the discordant pattern is felt and it untangles, as it diffuses, the nervous system releases the stress, the old stress, and everything starts to settle. And there's like a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Right? And the discordant pattern has untangled. It's let go of its trigger, its charge. It's let go of its discordant nature. It's unraveled. And it's found its true home. It's remembered. It has been seen through By not engaging the mind in the story, the feeling, the charge releases. It's like it gets distilled through your nervous system. Your nervous system is the consciousness that distills the appearance of misery into the bliss of being. And as it comes to zero, it's recognized by your being as bliss. And it brings, at the bottom of the surrender, it brings a feeling of openness and blissful gorgeousness, because you've surrendered through, you've been the vessel in service, and this discordant pattern has surrendered through your system and has come to remembering its true nature. And then the felt sense, your lived direct experience of the being feels clearer and more alive, more true, more awake, because a part of you that felt to be separate has come home. And then there's more availability, there's less distraction, there's less tangle. And this is what is happening through the play of life, is this constant offering to receive these parts of yourself and bring them home. Bring them home to wholeness, the wholeness that is your true nature. But you can see here, you can feel here. Seeing here is the clear seeing of the being that sees, right? You can see that everything has to come all the way home. If it only comes part the way home, if we go to the 5, 4, 3 and a thought comes in, we start going 4, 5, 6, 7, thinking starts to happen, right? The discordant pattern can get fired up again, back to the surface. Has to come all the way home, has to completely diffuse, right? The bomb has to be completely diffused. And that is where that karmic piece, that energetic signature that plays as karma, it gets completely seen through and completed. And then we could say, on the surface of life, something could come in that would once have caused enormous reaction and upset. And there's just a seeing of it without any reaction at all. Because there's been a completion. And then the tests don't need to come anymore. Right? Because the grace, the goodness of the divine, of love itself, the unconditional nature, is that it will keep testing us. It will keep testing us just to be sure. Be sure that this is where every stone is unturned, right? Where every I is dotted and every T is crossed. There's nothing that's left out of this divine revelatory process, right? But the glory is to recognize in the true nature that nothing that is happening is not part of it. Wholeness includes everything. And when we see from the true perspective, we see that absolutely everything that is happening is part of the grace. And then the little thread, well, it's not so little actually, it's a big thread of the ego sense that can keep finding itself doing something wrong, making mistakes, getting it wrong, not trying hard enough, not being committed enough. We come to see that that's just another defense mechanism, right? When we let that one go, there's more ability just to receive without judging whether you're working hard enough, whether you're doing this right. You recognize that there's no doer in any of it. As the being, there's no doer. The being just is. You are the being that just is. And everything is conspiring to see through doership, see through choosership, enjoyership, right? All of the ways that the me confirms itself, the me justifies itself. I'm worthy of this. I deserve this. I need to do this work in order to be seen more clearly. But it's to see, have the humility to see all the ways that the ego is constantly reinforcing its existence. And that's innocent because it's been learned. But the deeper humility is the willingness to let go of all of that as it comes up to the surface. Let it all go. Life is here to humble us, and that feels challenging on the surface of life to the conditioned patterns to protect. Being humble doesn't feel easy, but the more we are humbled, the more we can be living the true nature, because the true nature is humility. True nature is openness. True nature is the undefended self. So as we are living this, and we recognize how this mechanism of consciousness is working, the willingness to be humbled actually is, it's an open receiving again and again. They're saying, yes, okay, here's another piece, a willingness to be humbled again and again, to see through the ways that we hold protection, and that there's constantly more layers being unraveled. But as long as they are unraveled, we are freeing all of those knots that create the cycles of suffering and misery. And we are living more deeply as the being, living as the joyous, contented being that is ever open, ever open. And then there is this gratitude that arises at the bottom of surrender, at the bottom of releasing a piece of wholeness, diffusing a bomb. At the bottom of surrender, there comes a gratitude, and it's a divine gratitude. It's a gratitude for absolutely everything that's happening. It's like a repeating mantra of thank you, because the seeing is that there's nothing that is against you. There's no victim in this situation. You are the being, and everything is happening to bring you to a deeper freedom. This gratitude flows. It flows, and it flows as this incredible willingness to live the truth, and the living of this truth on the surface. Living it, it brings forward like a courage and a vigilance to live it more deeply. And this is it's the movement of the depth of receiving the grace. The depth that we receive the grace, we live it on the surface. And that is how we could say we give back to the divine for the grace that is constantly flowing. It's a quality of the grace being bestowed, but it's not being bestowed upon someone. It's receiving the offering. It's saying yes to the offering. And the way that the gratitude moves is that we live it, and we give back by living it, by letting the light that you are shine on the surface, by living it, not leaving yourself, that you're receiving even more deeply by living it. And by living it, you're living the depth of your receptivity. You're living the depth that you've taken it in, that you've really digested what is being offered. Can you feel that? Can you feel how the deeper that you digest it and you are nourished by it, you live that nourishment, And you offer then, you are then the offering of that nourishment in a finer degree of service on the surface of life. You are truly of service when you are living this truth, and you're living the awakeness, and you're shining that light on the surface. You are then the light of the world. You are the living being. You don't have to do anything. You just have to live this truth. You live the depth of your gratitude, and you live as an offering in service. And that service is played through the cycle by being willing to receive more and more, right? To be humbled again and again. It's not so much in service to apparent others, although that will come too. The deepest service is to keep digesting our own threads of conditioning until we're living in a depth where the service is, it's like a natural flow. It's the true karma yoga. The true karma yoga is it's a selflessness, and it's that willingness to recognize that this unfolding is not a personal awakening journey, that it's completely impersonal, that the whole thing, the whole of life is service. The whole of life is impersonal. The whole of life is life itself, flowing as life itself in surrender to itself. That there's never been anything here for the me. And as the me surrenders, is dissolved into what is really happening here, the true purpose of the human life. Life is a living service. And the deeper that we take it in, then the deeper the offering. But there's no one to be reaping any benefit anywhere from it. There's no one left, right? And the gorgeousness is that to the mind that feels like death and horror. But in truth, it's all that's ever been longed for, because you are living the fullness of the being. You're living the oneness through a unique form, a unique set of laws of nature. Your life itself living its uniqueness without anything to hold you back from being the love that you truly are, living that love, sharing, flowing as that love. And this is the fulfillment that we long for. This is the fulfillment that we long for. The fulfillment of being the self, being the wide open heart that is no longer protected. And it's then to see that the moments of protection are just here to release another layer. You come to recognize the love that is the true nature, the love that you are can never leave you. The truth can never leave you. Everything that you open to, everything that you are awake to, you are not someone who is awake to it. You are awakeness, awake consciousness itself, awake to itself. And that can never ever leave. So you can never do something on the surface of life that would cause love to leave you. You can never do something or say something on the surface of life that would cause truth to leave, because you are that love, you are the living truth. And that never ever leaves itself. The self never leaves itself. It would be impossible, because there's only one. There's no division. There's no division. You cannot get it wrong, and you cannot get it right. You can fall into the space between all ideas of right and wrong and open to the infinite field of being that is the true nature, where love is unconditioned and peace is undisturbable. and contentment and happiness are just here, because there's nothing that's needed, nothing that's wanted. Fulfillment just is. Just is. Mm. Mm. So as these words come, it's just always to receive the resonance of the recognition. Notice how the quality of the being becomes more enlivened and noticeable, because it is yourself. You already are this. You already are everything that is being spoken. And the pointing is this immediate possibility to recognize this truth as yourself. Mm. Mm.